But there's this other video I want to take a look at. And this video is called Wuthering Waves is a Disappointment. Bold words coming from Kukikaze. I don't know if I said that correctly. And so I gotta know what Mans is saying, because while I agree Wuthering Waves had a bit of a rough launch from some technical perspective for some players, and some people were a little bit disappointed by what happened on the JP side with the localization, I would say despite all of the issues that have been taking place, I think Wuthering Waves has actually still done a pretty excellent job. I think they've delivered a fantastic product when you get an opportunity to play it. I think the bosses are fun. I think the world is exciting to explore. And I think while the story definitely has some pacing issues early on, later on it gets pretty good. Still some minor pacing issues, but the story at least gets absolutely cracked later on, and I'm still a fan of it. But to call it an absolute disappointment feels like a bit of a stretch. I'm not gonna lie. It feels like a bit of a stretch. Bad taking coming, maybe. I mean, if you're opening it that way, like, I know there's a whole thing, you know, make everything nuclear. So, you know, maybe it could just be they're just trying to get people to click the video. But I mean, hey, look, here we are. I gotta know what Mans is gonna say. So let's see what Kukikaze has to say about this.
I think Wuthering Wave is a disappointment. This is coming from my first 10 hours of gameplay. I understand that making a video like this will make some of
10 hours. That feels like not enough. I feel like for a game that is meant to be played over a long period of time and meant for more hours of like investment, like most gacha games do, that still doesn't feel like enough time.
If you think that I'm biased or just a hater, but I'll do everything I can to explain to you clearly why I think this game is a huge letdown. On the first look, it's blatant that the game is very Genshin-esque. The UI is similar, the things you get to do, the vibes, the grind, it's all very much familiar if you're a Genshin player.
Let me be clear here. I have said this before and I will say it again. There is a philosophy when it comes to development and software development, and it's the idea of don't reinvent the wheel. Meaning, if there are certain systems, layouts, design, practices that players enjoy and are familiar with, leverage those. So if Genshin has already done a lot of the legwork in terms of, like, let's call it UI research, and put it together in a way that make players really comfortable or that it makes sense to them, having something similar to that is not a bad idea, and if anything is a really good idea to do, because it's going to make the transition of people coming from Genshin feel more comfortable in Wuthering Waves. And also it saves money and resources. So it's just smart on both ends. And while yes, you still want to be able to like iterate on that a little bit, and you need to make it still personal to your game, I still don't think it's a fair comparison or necessarily a huge problem for it to be that way. But okay.
Oh, this game really wants to pick up from a certain other game now, does it? They don't do a...
His comparison there was climbing, which I don't know about you. I have like never climbed in Wuthering Waves. You wall run. It's infinitely better. So, and also I guarantee you could put Breath of the Wild side by side with that and you could make literally the same argument. So that's just like, that's such a bad example.
Great job at hiding how much they want to be like Genshin when you see the same character progression tiers and battle pass rewards. This is going to be hilarious.
When it comes to a stat perspective, the stats you could 100% make comparable to any other gacha game. Like, frig, you could make it comparable to Epic 7 when you're talking about like hit rate, crit damage, attack percent. Like a lot of that is going to end up being very similar in that way. So like, again, that's not like exclusive to Genshin Impact.
Yes, hold on. Let me do a review, a side-by-side review of this battle pass. This is Raisin, which they put it on 5. What is 10? Gem. What's 15? The same thing. What's 25? Raisin. There's...
Bro, it's a battle pass. I guarantee you could bring up battle passes for a bunch of different gacha games and you're gonna get something similar.
There's no fucking way. Stop! Any Genshin players here, open up your Genshin tab right now. Compare the Genshin battle pass against this. The thing to understand here is that it's okay for a game to want to be like Genshin. I mean, who doesn't when it's the most successful gacha game historically and still is? I don't even like Genshin very much myself, but I respect any game trying to one-up the other as long as they do a good job at it. However, to...
Which again, I'm gonna jump in and say, at risk of sounding like a Wuthering Waves glazer at the moment, I think they have one-upped it in a lot of different ways. as of right now, I think with the level of combat improvement and polishing that has been added to it, I think with the additional skill opportunity with the echoes, making it feel more unique, I think they have improved upon it in a lot of different ways, especially when it comes to like world traversal, like the example he already gave. I feel like a battle pass complaint, which again, you could compare that to any other gacha game that has any kind of battle pass, and especially when it's stamina based, I 100% bet you will see a nearly identical system for it.
Top Genshin or become a more enjoyable version of it, the solution should not be to become like Genshin. We don't need another Genshin copy. Instead, any developer should learn from the things that they've done well, repeat them, and study the things they didn't do so well and improve upon them. That way, you are creating a better game. So, let's talk.
That's what they did. Like, what? The comparison he drew out, and then what his point was, like 100%. That is literally what they did. Like, I don't think Genshin's battle pass was a problem. So to draw on that for inspiration, similar to other gacha games battle passes, is not an issue. Genshin had some shortcomings in the combat and the world traversal, which they improved upon. 100% they have been iterating on the shortcomings of Genshin. So what are we arguing on that?
Let's talk about what Wuthering Waves did that was good. Obviously, every player who have played or seen the
Compliment sandwich, okay.
game will tell you that the game has immaculate combat. There are added layers to it compared to other games of this genre. These include outro and intro skills, a flurry of attack patterns, and the coolest part to me is the interchangeable extra skill. This skill comes from the relic system. The relics here aren't so much of mashing materials to become an attachment. Rather, whenever you fight a monster for the first time and absorb them, they turn into an echo. The primary echo you set will grant your character a unique ability to use in and out of battle. It's very
I'm glad he gave that the credit that it was due. I think one thing he doesn't even mention there too when it comes to the combat as well is while a lot of characters you can play button mashing if you just want to spam the basic attack combo, there are opportunities to have more technical combinations of characters' kits in terms of like Donjin, for example. She has 3 different combos that you can do with her skill of like 1 swing, skill, 2 swing, skill, or 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3 on the basic attack and skill where, yeah, you could just keep spamming basic attack, or you can utilize the skill to utilize her kit a little bit better. And the same things with like Calcharo, for a lot of other characters in the game, that there are more techs to be found if you want to have a more unique and integrated combat experience, or you can do it simply. And that's also not a problem. Like, I think a lot of people don't give that combat as much credit for how friendly it is on both ends.
cool. All the fight sequences, animations, like how the monsters interact with your hits and vice versa, are all buttery smooth and a fantastic experience. I know there are optimization issues, but at least for my PC, I kind of just ran the game fine. Now, beautiful combat.
Yeah, I was the same way, even on launch day. Like, I had to drop some of the settings, but then it was fine, so.
Is also paired with beautiful world design. The places you can visit in the game are pleasing to the eyes. Most relevant comparison I can make is to Genshin, and I will give it to Wuthering that its visuals are clearly better. There's one more additional aspect to the game that a lot of people appraise.
My man, on point. It is better in a lot of ways, especially once you get that brightness, which is actually gamma, but it's fine. We'll call it brightness. Once you get that brightness drop down in those effect sliders, for me personally, it's in like the right sweet spot for it. So if you haven't done that yet already, make sure to do that, because bringing that brightness down, absolutely sublime.
And I will too. But I will argue it's not a differentiating factor to sell that it's a great game. That is cutscene animations. When you enter major cutscenes, the characters are very expressive when speaking, and for the fighting cutscenes, they're flashy and impressive to watch. But this
And I will mention that there's actually a lot of cutscenes that have been incorporated into the game. Some smaller segmented ones that aren't just set for the finale of certain quests, but they're integrated kind of throughout as things are going on. So the amount that there are too, actually, I think deserves some credit.
extent of animation is easily attainable in other gacha games. The Hoyoverse titles, Arknights, and many other games have in recent times delivered stunning animations in and out of game. So, I'll overall put it that the visual aspect of the game.
I'm not a big Arknights guy, but I feel like the only area in which there's been like the cool Arknights animations were like the special anime animations that they've like rolled out, which I don't equate to like in-game story cutscenes, if that makes sense. It feels kind of like extra, so I don't think that's a fair comparison to make. Probably a fair comparison for Honkai Impact 3rd, because most of those special animations were still integrated into the story when they dropped them. And I will say the Honkai Impact 3rd animations, oh man, those are what got me into the game. Man, Final Lesson to this day still brings a tear to my eye, not gonna lie. Credit where credit is due.
Is top tier. But with that out of the way, it's time to talk about all the painful parts of the game. Games are most often accompanied by a story. It's ever important because it develops the characters you like, the world, and sometimes hook you in on the lore and mysteries. Putting it harshly, this game is terrible at telling stories. Right off the bat, you're introduced to how the game revolves around sound, loading you with technical jargons in your front few hours. Difficult words.
Yeah, I said the same thing. I said there's so much lore dumping that happens in the first, like, especially the first 2 chapters. It's so bad. And I still to this day hate the research facility portion, which might still technically be Act 1, when you go in to meet Baija, where you unlock convening for the first time. It is just back to back to back to back to back conversation and so much lore dumping that you're like, man, can we shut up? Now they at least put in that the dreamless sequence to kind of break it up a little bit, and there's a little bit of combat and testing out Baija that they added that I don't think was there during the CBT2. But like, man, outside of that, that sequence is rough, dude. That is rough.
Words are turn-offs for casual audiences coming in. Then this game runs the typical storyline that you, the protagonist, is a mysterious figure who turns out very powerful, making both good and evil people interested in you. The protagonists, whether male or female, are pretty good looking, so that helps. But what doesn't help is that the dialogue...
Yeah, both protagonists look really good, but we all know female Rover does look better. Let me just say,
choose as the MC never feels very valuable. They're not funny, they don't have that much of a personality. I understand the developers probably think that dialogue choices makes players feel like they have control over the game, but I'd rather sacrifice that control if they don't really add value to my character. The supporting...
That is so incredibly true that I am on board with this. If Wuthering Waves wanted to pivot on the story, maybe I make a whole video about this. Let me know. But if Wuthering Waves wanted to pivot where honestly you just got rid of dialogue options and just had a better, more well-written story with the main character, and they voiced the rover throughout that whole process in the same way, I 100% would take that. 100%. I don't like the illusion of choice, and this game is marketed like an RPG, so I understand that like you need to have the dialogue options, but like there's been one area that has had any consequence. There's one area in the whole story is that has consequence for it, and that is with Scar. There is an opportunity to talk to Scar to force the fight if you want to, if you don't want to go through his whole lore. So there's one area in the game that has any kind of RPG consequence. So unless they have more opportunities for things like that, I would rather it just be scripted, but they could still include things like that, but still just have them be like scripted sequences, if that makes sense.
characters are also not that fantastic. Straight up, I'm not the type of player appealed by characters showing a lot of skin, having less clothing. They are good looking, and it's okay to see such characters, but it is appalling when all the main characters you meet, except yourself, always feel the need to show their shoulders, their back, their chest. Like, this is the kind of thing a cash grab game would do, and it's not the experience I want in a game like this. This makes me respect that Genshin has a good balance of this, with some characters bearing some skin, while others don on splendid outfits. Honkai Star Rail and Arknights does an even better job at their character design. To make myself clear, I'm not telling the game to go full halal. Instead, it's about having the right amount of seasoning, haram seasoning, so that the game can taste so much better. Apart from the look,
Wuthering Waves doesn't market itself as a degenerate fan service game. So when it does have overly fan servicey moments, it can be jarring for some people because that's not what you're looking for Wuthering Waves to be. I can understand that argument. It's different than, let's say you pull up Nikkei. You expect that to be a Nikkei. Let's be real, guys. If you're playing Nikkei not expecting that to be part of it, I don't know what game you've picked up and started playing. Like, okay, let's call a spade a spade. So when Nikkei has its ridiculous levels of fan service, that's what's expected to be there. But if you're not expecting that degree of fan service to be added into a game, and then you start to encounter it, that can be a problem. However, I think as far as fan service goes in games, Wuthering Waves is a far cry from most other gacha games in terms of its like level of fan service. There is a handful of characters, one of which being like Yin Lin, that like have any degree of, I would say, like intentional like sexiness added to them. Broadly speaking, I think most of the outfits, while having some level of like skin showing on them, are not sexualized to the same degree as other characters who are wearing more clothes. So like I can see where he's coming from, but I don't think that's the thing in Wuthering Waves.
Looks though, voices also not that great. The characters all have a general habit of speaking slowly, and they're not good.
Like, let's go back on that frame for a sec. Like, let's look at Chisha here, for example. Well, yes, Chisha is wearing like a crop top in this case. We can see she's got her tacit mark on her hip there. I still would not say this is like an overly sexualized character, even despite her having more skin on the character, because certain things are not emphasized in the same way. Does that make sense? I feel like it's still like a little bit of an overcalculation there.
And they're not good at having an attractive personality. You don't need a tasteful personality in real life, but your characters that you play in the game needs it, because that's what helps you to make you feel closer to the game. The story readers
I'm not going to berate the point about the voice acting in Wuthering Waves. We all know that there was some voice acting issues, especially on the EN side. They've already addressed it, and they're going to be correcting it moving forward. So I'm not going to berate that point, but like it's fair enough.
Experience in this game can be described with one word: bumpy. On top of the bad narrative direction, there are many fatal errors, such as voice lines cutting out before they finish, dialogue skipping without you clicking, the inability to scroll long text, which you can on PC by left out and click drag your mouse to scroll. Mouse wheel scroll doesn't work for some reason, and you definitely can.
I want to pause for a sec on the word he used there. He said these are fatal errors. Every error he's brought up is annoying and an inconvenience, but a far cry from fatal. Also, I think specifically on the scroll wheel like bug that he's talking about, that's been fixed for where there's like a lot of text that's been brought in there. So, well, yes, that I believe that was a bug. I think it has been corrected as of this point, but fatal? Fatal? Jeez.
Cannot scroll on mobile devices, because when you try to, it registers as a tab, meaning you'll skip to the next line. What's this?
Again, I believe that's been fixed as well.
I cannot mouse scroll this. The dialogue no fit the screen. How do you? There is no backlog function, so you can't reread if you missed anything. By the way, a big plus of the game is that you can skip the story. So if you hate reading stories and want to speedrun, you can, but only for narration that the game considers less important.
Girl's back
if they
fetish.
consider it crucial for you to understand, you must sit through the story and feel all the pains I mentioned. Apparently, while filming this video, the developers added the function to skip all the cutscenes in the game. And that to me is not the solution, because it sounds as if they are not committed to improve the story experience or are admitting that it's shit. If you play the game,
No, that's not true. So there's just a lot of people that choose to play the game differently. Not everybody wants to sit through all of the story. And especially, there's also the people in the middle who don't want to sit through all of the non-voice story. I think most players still want to experience at least the voice story, but there are a lot of people who don't. And they just want to get in, get the combat, play the characters, and explore the world. So if somebody wants to play in that game, they should have the option to play the game in that way. Does it maybe limit some degree of connection you might have with the characters? Then like, sure, maybe. But again, I think somebody should have the option to do that. I don't think that's an admission of guilt. But at least we know there's going to be improvements moving forward. So I feel like we're overemphasizing some things here.
you would have seen the clunky ways NPCs behave when speaking to you. Hand gestures and body movements that don't match their voices, some of them looking very awkward. The biggest frustration for me is back-faced characters. This means that the characters who are speaking at the moment never looks towards you, but show you their backs instead. This is a very painful way to sit through the story, because you get disoriented as to who is speaking or who to give your attention to. Can you see the fatal error with this, where they changed the camera angles 3 times? The first time when they changed the camera angle was facing this medical personnel. The second time was showing all the injured personnel. The third one is this current angle. And you see the mega flaw as to how we're not even having a lot of lines for these two characters, and the main person speaking is the person not looking at me. I don't understand why. Is it because they don't want to animate the mouth? Could that be it? They just don't.
Nobody cares about nameless NPC number 3 that we're not going to talk to again in like 30 seconds. So I don't know why we're complaining about not highlighting the NPC in this case. Like, he sounds so fired up about that. I would rather be looking at the other characters. Also, in terms of dynamics of conversation, Genshin had a big issue, I know, for a lot of dialogues, where like it would just sit in one place for an extended period of conversation. And actually, Wuthering Waves to some degree on the side quests does still deal with it too, because it's not voiced. They don't necessarily have as many cuts, but I find swapping around in the angles does provide like a more cinematic opportunity, I guess you could say. Like, it's a little more engaging. You get more ADHD cuts, retention cuts in the story. I don't actually see this being an issue like at all, personally.
Don't want to do the mouth animation, so they hide it by showing the character's head.
漂泊者，那我们
Again! Fourth camera angle! Fourth! You have the perfect opportunity to flip to her.
I don't think the lack of voice animation is an issue, simply because I believe there's been some new tech that has come out that it's able to read voice waves, and then you can kind of simulate animation based on like the voice waves that are coming through. I'm pretty sure, if memory serves, that's how Honkai Star Rail does a lot of their voice like animation, or their mouth flapping animation, and it actually adjusts for each of the languages in game. Also, thank you, Alex, so much for the follow. So like, I don't think that's the case. I thought they incorporated something like that into Wuthering Waves as well. It seems like so far the voices were decently matched to the lip flap, but I don't know, maybe I just haven't been observant enough on that. But again, this has not bothered me. This has not bothered me.
You don't do it, and you put it on these two. Being in 2024, I think it's a bare minimum standard that a story-based 3D game should understand how to have conversational manners. The manners
Again, I thought the cuts were fine. I just don't agree with this point.
here being, if someone speaks to you, you can look straight at them. It's not to say that the characters must always face you, but it's a problem when the characters almost always do not do so.
Again, like we're looking up at the action here. Also, that strange civilian is talking, so like this seems to be hitting his point.
In short, the switching of camera angles in this game is horrendous.
侦察塔。
Don't let them run off. Are we gonna chase them?
哥，我走不动了，太饿了。
别说我们实在没办法了才偷东西的。
你们是遇到什么困难了吗？这不是现在北边战事紧张吗？我们这些人没有物资，实在活不下去了。
Wait.
还是打
Who was the first person I just spoke to?
What is he saying? It showed the girl curled up, like she couldn't move. Like, I mean, maybe there's some confusion there. Is that the same girl who was just curled up a second ago? Maybe this is someone new, but I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be she like just came down, which that part is a little bit jarring, but like, I don't know. I feel like it tracked the girl. We looked at the guy. We saw our characters, and then he came down. That seems to, I don't know.
Was it like a bandit attacking them? I don't even know who I was speaking to. The camera angle didn't even show me who was talking.
Literally every angle showed who was talking there.
Now, remember that I told you that I can't remember certain names.
What?
Understand this. I'm Chinese myself. 我可以讲中文。我是来自新加坡。
Okay, you don't need to flex on me like that just because I can't speak Chinese. Okay, thank you.
The thing is, the decision of this game to immediately dive their players to their first region being Chinese based is utterly strange, especially when you're releasing this to the whole wide world. There are tons of Chinese gacha games where the environment is set solely in China, but I don't think that's what Wuthering Wave is meant to be, and will explore other cultures and places. Setting stone in China first is going to give your players a wrong impression. Even as a Chinese myself, the flurry of over 20 Chinese names is quite draining.
So, I have mixed feelings on that. I've heard other people say similar, and like, maybe I'm just the outlier here, but like, I've been following Wuthering Waves for a while, and so I've been following the character names, and I guess while some of them might have been a little bit tricky early on, it didn't bother me a ton, because like, as somebody who also likes to watch anime, there's often a lot of like, Japanese names that get incorporated into anime, or weird names that get incorporated into anime that are unfamiliar, and like, you still learn them if you care, right? Like, at this point, I don't have any issue saying and or knowing any of the names of the characters in this game. I just think like, it's different because more people might be expecting like Japanese sounding names, but it is a Chinese game in a Chinese inspired region. I just don't think it's that big of a deal. I don't know. It's just never bothered me. I've never really had that big of an issue with it. And also there are like more localized names like Encore, Alto, Like just the two that come to mind is like more local. Rover is the name of your character. I don't think Danjin is like a super like, I don't know, Chinese name. Like a couple of them with like, or like Yang Yang is also not, but then there's like sure, like Chisha or Baija, maybe like those like Jinshi. Some of them are a little bit tricky, but like when you actually go through the roster of the characters' names, there's not as many like very Chinese names, at least from like how I'm reading them out. But let me know what you think, chat. But I feel like the names have not been an issue for me. And like that's not as a Chinese speaker.
This is why a lot of global gacha games don't choose China as the first region to explore. Liyue is the second for Genshin, Luofu also the second in Stario, and Langmen or Yan is explored 7 months into the game for Arknights.
Well, I do understand that and understand not making it the first region. Would it have been better with some more localized names? I'm sure it would have been easier for some players. I just don't see it being as big of an issue as some people are making it out to be. That's all.
So I really don't quite understand if the game is jeopardizing its potential of a player base by going to Huanglong first.
Like, that's a comparison I think is kind of crazy. That going to Huanglong first is like that big of a like that you're jeopardizing the future of the game. I don't know.
First, to become better than another game, I've said that you either imitate the good things or you improve upon the bad ones. And finally, this game does the opposite in some areas, meaning they are worse or they adopt the equally bad qualities. What the hell is this side scroller for a time change rather than a clock?
That is because of the Zoomers in chat, I see you, who don't know how to read a full 360 hand clock. A 2-hand clock. So they're like, fine, let's make this ridiculous scroll wheel for the Zoomers. I see you. I see you in chat and on YouTube. I know you can't read those clocks. You got to look at your phone. You got to look at the digital. You got to look at something else because you can't read the 2 hands. I'm disappointed with you, okay? Although I will say the side scroll is kind of weird. It is kind of weird.
Team setup being in 2D instead of 3D, menu UI looking like it's from a cheap template online, idle voice lines playing every goddamn 20 to 25 seconds,
Stopping to relax once in a while serves for a stronger
and no
Like, are you standing around a lot? Like, is that why that's an issue for you? You've been standing around so much and the voice lines start to play? Like, bro, that's normal. If you're running around, it doesn't happen. You only get the voice lines when you do certain things, or you lose health, or you open a chest, or something like that. Like, yeah, like, of course, and there's voice lines for those things. Like, yeah, if you're standing around for 10 minutes on the idle screen, like, yeah, you're gonna hear them say the voice lines a lot. Like, jeez.
120 FPS support. Seriously, a game with a PC client in 2024 of this genre capping out at 60 FPS. This video started with me explaining that this game very clearly wants to compete with Genshin, or experience a piece of its success. It uses the same business model as Genshin, having terrible gacha rates, sharing the same high prices for pooling currencies in today's economy, and the free pooling currency not being very easy to attain.
And no, he's right on the extent of this is not the most generous gacha game on the market. It is an improvement from Genshin's, let's be clear, based on having the 100% rate up weapon. But again, I think that's because weapons are going to become more and more important. At least it's not a 50-50. There are a split between the weapon and standard character banners, which is definitely an improvement there. They do still have the 50-50 on the rate up characters, which I don't love, but it is what it is. So I still think it's an improvement from the Genshin banners, but no, it is a far cry from the most generous gacha rates. Like that is very true.
Ed Bulls is 40 fucking bucks. Another fucking Hoyoverse piece of shite. It is quite harsh for
It is expensive. And that's why, if you want to be free to play, frick you, Bazookas, be free to play all you want. Play all games how you want. You want to spend anything? Don't spend anything. Don't let anybody tell you otherwise. That's right.
for me to speculate like this, but it feels like the developers came into this with the greed of wanting to earn the same caliber of Genshin. Again, nothing wrong with that mindset because all of us want to earn money, but it's about how you do it. If the game is well polished, brilliantly made, then that desire is fully justified. For what it is, this game
well, it needed some functionality and optimizations, which have been happening. The game is really polished. The combat is super polished. The echoes are great. So again, ridiculous point.
feels like it was rushed out to meet the company's expectations and it just turns out to be half-baked and sloppy. A brilliant
Like, seriously, that is such extreme language. The story in 1.0 is rough. It is definitely could be improved. It's just still, it's like way too harsh.
Real-time combat game with stellar visuals only to be ruined by the choice of making it gacha rather than a standalone game, and then to give it a conversely painful auditory experience, not giving players much reasons to remember it for.
I think most people would not have played this game if it was not gacha, because you sell people on a game by its characters. Gacha has a model that is best for rolling out new characters in a financially viable way instead of a one-time purchase. I don't know how many people would pick up Wuthering Waves if it was just a full price $80 game or something like that. I don't think that many people would have given it the attention.
This is why I'm disappointed with Wuthering Waves. I'll still play the game to clear out the story, and I understand that the game is rushing out hot fixes every single day. People have said that the gameplay will get much better later into the game, but for anyone starting out the game fresh, why would they wait until 20 hours in the game to experience the good stuff when the first 5 to 10 hours of their game have been very painful?
The story, again, he's trying to equate the entire game. Like, yes, there are some bumpy parts of the story. Nobody's denying that. But to say the entire gameplay, the world traversal, the combat that you get encountering, the echoes that you start to unlock within the first 10 hours, to call all of that incredibly painful, bro, is the most gross overstatement of the century, guys. Like, that's crazy to me. That's crazy to me that he would equate that.
I hope Wuthering Waves will improve, maybe with the help of this video. And please share with me as well, how do you feel towards this game? I hope it was a great video, and thank you for watching. See you in the next one. Bye bye.
I will say again, as always, I appreciate it when people share their thoughts and opinions, even if I disagree, especially when it seems like he actually wants to see improvement to the game. Now, again, I still think it was a gross overstatement on a few of the points that he tried to make. But I do think some of the points he made actually were fair. And I did agree with actually some of the things that he went out of his way to say. And so I still think there's some improvement that can still happen. And I appreciate what Kukikaze had to say about it. It's a lot of Ks. Just gonna say, it's a lot of Ks in a name. I will have a link in the description for the full video as well for those of you watching on YouTube. If you want to catch me live, I stream every Sunday, Wednesday, Friday from 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern time. Play a lot of Wuthering Waves. Look at YouTube, some good reacts. Always would love to see you. Come on out and join me live on stream. If you made it this far in the video, thank you so much for watching. Shout out to all the subscribers on Twitch. Those of you on Patreon who support me doing what I do, I greatly appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.